The Entrepreneur's Library, episode 192.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Welcome back to the EL. Today we have Chris Reimer, author of Happywork, a business parable about the journey to teamwork, profit, and purpose. Welcome, Chris, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Before we dive into Happywork, will you take just a moment to introduce yourself? Tell us just a little bit about you personally.
Definitely. So I'm based here in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm a marketing communications strategist. I've been doing that for about 5 or 6 years. Previous to that, I spent over 15 years as a CPA and a CFO of organizations around St. Louis. So I've had a little bit of a career change over the past 5 or 6 years. And I recently authored this book. It took me a few years to ultimately get it done. But this is a subject matter that, along with social media, new media, and marketing and branding and communications and all that, the book's premise, that being workplace morale and happiness, is something that I'm currently focused on.
Excellent. So first off, thank you for sharing that. Now let's jump in and go deeper with that. Happywork, a business parable about the journey to teamwork, profit, and purpose, which was made available actually not that long ago, almost up for its month anniversary, February of 2015. And Chris, we're going to move quickly, but our whole goal here today is really help that our listener / future reader get a great idea of what your book's all about. And answer a couple of questions that they have. The first question would be, what was the inspiration behind writing Happywork?
I would have to say the short term, which I would say would be 5, 10, 15 years previous, would have been my own work experiences. I've never had a job that was absolutely horrible. I've never had just terrible, awful things happen at work, like being fired for being a woman or for having the wrong skin color or anything like that. But I've had some pretty colorful job experiences. And I'd say that, the other inspiration to dial back even farther would be my mother and what she went through working a 30-plus year career for the U.S. government. It's, as you can probably imagine, there were some knuckleheads there and some interesting experiences that she had. And when my brother and I were kids, we caught on to the fact that she didn't like her job. And she was very reserved about it, properly reserved. But we were able to sort of break her down a little bit and, get some facts out of her. And one of those facts was that she didn't like her job. And she explained to us that, well, first of all, she didn't go to college, so she lacked sort of the mobility that a lot of us have now because of our educations, plus just the availability of the internet and, doing crazy things like changing from accounting to marketing or whatever. But the second thing she told us is that, she did it for us, that she was there to support us and we were standing on her shoulders, so we could reach for something higher. And, my brother and I looked at each other and we said, that's so sweet, but we still don't understand. So me not being able to solve that equation was probably what got me thinking about happiness and fulfillment in the workplace.
And what would you say, you and I were talking beforehand, how many books come out each month. So what makes your book different from others regarding the same or similar topic?
Yeah, this is a story. So the title there, A Business Parable About the Journey to Teamwork, Profit, and Purpose, that might be slightly mistitled. I mean, when I think of business parables, I think of mice wondering where their cheese went or whatever. This is an actual story with actual human beings in it. But it's a story. And so I had a nonfiction version of this written, 60 to 70% written, and decided to switch gears and change it to a story because I felt like the lesson that I wanted to teach was going to be better absorbed by people via a story. That's how human beings, I believe, learn best. And so instead of bullet points and PowerPoints and things like that, I decided to do something I hadn't done since high school, which was write a piece of fiction. So in that respect, it's quite a bit different. And I think a lot of business books are purchased and written, maybe properly so, in order to spoon feed the answer to people. And with my book, I've got a lot of ideas in here. There's definitely some lessons to be learned, which I know we're going to go over. But ultimately, I don't tell you exactly what to do. I remind you how much hard work it really is to run a great company where people can find fulfillment and ultimately happiness.
Chris, how do you suggest the the reader engage with your book? Is this one they can jump in and jump out, cherry picking information as they go, or did you really write it to be read from front to back?
It's front to back. There is a section near the back, which we'll probably go over, which is a work code of conduct called the Happywork Agreement. And when we when we dive into the book a little bit, I will explain that further. But as it's a story, you definitely want to read it from front to back. It is 180 pages, and if you are a fast reader, you can read this in one night. If you are a moderate reader, you could probably get through it in a few nights. And if you're like me, it'd probably take about a week. But it is a pretty quick read, and I've had people say, those phrases that authors love, like, I just couldn't put it down. I said, that's music to my ears. So definitely go front to back, because you're gonna live the life at this fictitious company that I've created, and you're gonna want to feel it from start to finish, and you're gonna want to see what happens to these characters as they come in with confidence and all of the necessary knowledge and experience they're going to need to get the job done, and you're going to see by the end where all that confidence goes.
Very good. So, Chris, we're to my favorite part of the entire interview, and that's where I really just hand over the mic and let you take us through your book. But we now know the purpose, a little bit of the background behind the book. So, will you take the next couple of minutes and really share with us, share with the listener what they can expect to get out of your book when they pick it up?
Definitely. And, I can get a little bit talkative, so I don't know if there's like an orchestra that can start playing if I start talking too long. But you just dive in and pull me out. But
we usually just shock people.
I like that. This is cool. Yeah, I am wearing some headphones. You might be able to work that out, like a Bond villain or something. So my story starts with a man named Dick Venori, who owns a company, Venori Incorporated. They're a manufacturing company, and Dick is a second generation owner. Now, if you have any listeners who have started their own companies or are second or third generation owners of companies where there have been multi-generations working at the company and perhaps the politics involved, I have done that myself as a third generation person in a family business. There will be some definite interest in this book for that person, I would say. So Dick is on a phone call with his bank, and the bank is telling him, basically, you're learning this right away, right at the start, that this old manufacturing company is sort of on the ropes. They are 30 days away from basically foreclosure because they can't pay their bills. And so Dick decides that he is going to call a turnaround specialist. And that's my main character. There are two main characters, which we'll get to in a minute. But Sam Maslow comes in, and he's a turnaround specialist. He's very good at what he does, highly talented. Former CPA, so no relation to me, but maybe a tad bit of inspiration. But Sam doesn't fail. So when Sam gets called in to turn around a company, he's very good at figuring out what the problem is. He's very good at doing what needs to be done. Quite often, one of the main tools in his toolbox is obviously restructuring and sometimes layoffs and things like that. And he's just the guy to do it. He's not afraid to pull those levers and make those things happen, and really feels no pain when it happens. He gets the job done, and he gets paid well to do it. And so he gets brought into Venori by Dick, and Sam says, I'm going to need to tear this place down to the studs in order to figure out what's wrong with it. And Dick gives him the keys to the place, and Sam goes on his way. He meets a man named Charlie, who's probably my other main character. And Charlie is an older fellow who works in the mailroom, but has some wisdom that's probably beyond his job title. And there is a lesson there, in fact, that you can learn something from almost everybody on earth, even your enemies, and even people who work in the mailroom. And so Charlie comes forth and really challenges Sam, because he knows why Sam's there. He knows Sam is going to be there. And this company has gone through 3 rounds of layoffs, and he knows Sam is there probably to make number 4 happen. They're going to have to figure out why this company is failing, and they're going to have to save it, and they're going to have to give something to the bank or else. And so Sam is challenged by Charlie right away, and Sam doesn't know what to make of this old man. He finds him to be rather prickly and difficult. Sam then goes about studying the company, and he first encounters the CFO named Neil, and Neil isn't a lot of fun. Frankly, he's not terribly good at his job, but he's found a way to proverbially lock himself in his office and not get a lot done. His fortress is secure, and so he gives Sam a lot of hard time, and Sam can't get a lot of information out of him. I hate to give away this part, but Neil does then eventually yell at an employee and throw a phone at them. And Sam witnesses this and realizes that probably wasn't the right thing for Neil to do. And it actually kind of takes Sam's breath away a little bit. And all the times that he's been in the company, he has never seen physical violence in such a way. And so he starts to get a little bit confused. He's having a hard time finding what's wrong with the company. He can't find out what's wrong, and he's struggling a little bit with some of the things he's seen. He sees some other things he's just never seen in other companies. Like people throwing tirades against other people. Dick himself throwing a tirade against someone. And it was actually all staged. It was just staged in order to get people's attention. He just sees things that are just they're incongruent with what you normally find at a good company. He then encounters the head of HR, who the title of that chapter 7, is the Antichrist of HR. So Melinda is a little bit, she is tough. She is a tough character, and she doesn't mind cutting off heads to get the job done. So in some respects, you'd think that she and Sam might be comrades, but in fact, at this point, Sam's starting to feel the pressure a little bit, and he's finding himself unable to get the job done. And what I do in the story is I take you through where he gets just progressively more, I don't know if confused is the right word, but he just gets progressively more down every day. Like each day he comes on this 4-week assignment, he doesn't want to be there. Every day it gets a little bit worse. And there are a lot of reasons why it gets worse, and I take the reader through that. As he's interviewing people, he's interviewing all people in the company to try to understand what's going on. He gets a chance to interview Charlie. And Charlie is very talkative, and Charlie keeps him for a couple hours, and Charlie really challenges him on everything that Sam believes about business. That people can be compartmentalized, and he really takes Sam to the cleaners during this interview. So much so that Sam misses all the rest of his interviews because Charlie just kept him in there. And it was almost like Charlie was interviewing him. And so there's a lot to learn. That's in chapter 9, and there's a lot to learn in there. And eventually Sam kind of has a little bit of a breakdown, and Charlie didn't mind that. Charlie kind of precipitates this a little bit, and Charlie pushes him pretty hard. And long story short, Sam comes around and starts to realize that the thing that this workplace is missing, he can't quite figure out what's wrong, but it's definitely missing good teamwork. It is completely lacking productivity, and there are very few people there that are fulfilling any of their human needs, and they're not finding the least bit of happiness there. And through his experience at Benori, he realizes that this is actually pretty important. And at other companies, when he was able to pull certain levers to change things, it hadn't mattered. But here it matters, and he finally realizes that. And he then, I really don't want to give this away, but he does find out what's wrong with the company. He discovers something, and that's actually a pretty fast-paced chapter. I've had some people tell me that they found that to be just the most interesting chapter, the one they couldn't put down. Eventually, he's able to go back to Dick and explain to Dick how clueless he has been for all these years. As the second generation owner, he takes over from his father, and the father ran a great company, and Dick is just too hands-off, slightly clueless, doesn't really like managing people, and sequesters himself in his office. And what ends up happening is Sam decides that he is going to give Dick his money's worth. That if Dick is paying him all this money to be there, that he is going to shoot him straight. He's going to tell him the truth. And he lays it all out for Dick, and it's pretty much an indictment on Dick and his leadership. And, one of the things I say in the book is, crazy companies are usually crazy because of leadership, because they set the tone or they don't set the tone. And so he's able to get Dick to understand that some things need to change very quickly. And so they draft this Happywork agreement, a sort of work code of conduct where employers and employees are going to make commitments to each other. So going back to your second question, what makes this book a little bit different, is that I'm not taking sides. So this is not a populist book where, the workers are rising up against management. And this is not necessarily a management book where I tell you exactly how to control people. This is a book where I don't take sides. Both sides, if a company is failing, they can celebrate that failure together, that it's really everybody's fault. Leadership sets the tone, but ultimately everyone is responsible for something in a company. So employers probably need to do some things in this changing world to take a little bit better care of their employees. Employees shouldn't feel like they absolutely deserve their jobs, like it's their right to have a job. They need to show up to work on time. They need to call in if they're not going to make it. If they give 2 weeks notice, they shouldn't stop working for those 2 weeks. So it's really shared responsibility in this Happywork agreements. And so they decide that they want to take this agreement and sort of superimpose it over the company. And ultimately, it helps to fend off the bank and save the company. And so the lesson, I probably talked for longer than my allotted time, but the ultimate lesson here is that we too often overlook our own fulfillment and our own happiness at work. We just shrug our shoulders and we say, it's just a job, who likes their job? Well, I wish to draw a line in the sand right now and say, I want to enjoy my job. I want to enjoy what I do. I don't think it's too much to ask. I think the way our system is set up right now, it is a big challenge to get a majority of people enjoying their jobs. We're at a point right now where studies show between 70 and 80% of people aren't enjoying what they do and are sometimes very unhappy at work. And I just find that to be a tragedy. I think that our unhappiness at work is contributing not only to lower productivity at work, because honestly, which employee would you be apt to get a better work out of? Someone who was enjoying what they were doing and wanted to be there, or someone who's unhappy and really didn't want to be there? But not only does it affect that, but it also affects our ability to be good spouses and good parents. And so I think for, the entrepreneurs in the, upper management people who just are very driven, I think there is a message here for them. I think that some of them probably are interested maybe in finding ways to get a little more work-life balance, if that's even possible, when you're trying to start something and build something from scratch. But it's really important to remember that, if you're struggling at work, it is most often going to affect your ability to drive home and be a good spouse or a good parent. And I always disliked that when I was I had nothing left in the gas tank when I got home. And, I gave it all at work, and I just thought, really, probably my wife and kids deserve me more than work. I hate to say that, but so that's where I like to find a balance where I can give at work and give at home. And so that's ultimately the message of the book. And I give you, in that Happywork agreement, there's 46 commitments, and really that's 46 great ideas that you can pick through, or you can take them all and implement them at your business. There is an ROI to building better teams of people. You're going to have them be happier, more productive. The good ones are going to stick around, and the bad ones are going to be the ones that probably leave.
So Chris, you just went through a ton of extremely valuable information and content and gave us some context behind it. But this next question is really to even break it down even further. So if the reader could only take away one concept, principle, or action item out of your entire book, everything you just took the time to break down for us, what would you want that to be?
Geez, there's probably not just one thing, but I think it's what I said right at the end, is that if I had one chance to tell you something about this book, it would be that, I really want your buy-in on the fact that there is an ROI to having a happy, fulfilled workforce, and there are ways to compute that. Turnover does cost companies money. Lower productivity obviously costs companies money. And to think that we can take our workforce and we can sort of hammer that square peg into the round hole, and get what we need out of them without worrying about them fulfilling their human needs, without helping them grow, without helping them with their careers, and without sending them home in decent enough shape to be a good dad or a good spouse, I just think is a tragedy. So for me, I want people to understand that there is an ROI to this stuff.
And you said a ton of quote-worthy stuff so far in this interview, and that's actually leads into our next question, which is, do you have a favorite quote from your book, and will you take a second to explain what it means to you?
Definitely. I've got a couple, but here's one that I kind of enjoyed writing. There's I had mentioned during my manifesto talk a few minutes ago about the part of the book where there's someone stages a fight. Basically, they basically stage a dressing down in order to send a message to the workers in the warehouse. And Charlie doesn't like that. He caught wind of it, and Sam witnessed it. It wasn't Sam's idea, but Charlie saw it. Sam, the consultant, saw it. Charlie heard about it, and Charlie challenges Sam on this. And Sam thought it was actually a good idea. And Charlie basically asked, he's like, was there a better way to achieve the same result without yelling? Of course there was, he says. He says, you might think you saw results after the screaming ended, but do you know what you missed? You missed how those employees felt afterward, how much stress they had running through their veins, how they feared for their jobs, how they took that stress home, how their families were subjected to that stress. It's very unnecessary. And then here's the quote. He says, why use fear and intimidation? Why do you have to scare us? This isn't a haunted house. So when I wrote that, I felt like a writer when I wrote that. This was like a cool line that I thought, oh, geez, I might be good at this fiction stuff. So I think that's the one.
That's awesome. And we'll reference that and put that in the show notes at the elpodcast.com. A lot of our entrepreneurs are mobile, so they can go back and reflect on that later when they're in front of their computer. But Chris, this next question is asking you not for just any book recommendation, but the book, a book that you could recommend to our listeners based on the way that it changed your life, created a paradigm or a lifestyle shift. Do you have a book that you'd like to share with us?
It has to be The Go-Giver by Bob Burg. And he had a co-author, John David Mann, I think was his name, but I always refer to it as Bob Burg. So Bob wrote the business parable. He calls his a business story. You have to get this book. If you've listened to this podcast and you think my book sounds like something you want to check out, buy his too and read his first. I mean, it is fantastic. It is the only business book ever, and this probably wouldn't surprise you, but it's the only business book ever that has made me cry. I mean, at the end of the story, and I've had a few people tell me that happens with my book, but his book changed the way I think about how I conduct my life and how I conduct business, which really don't need to be two different things. So I would have to say The Go-Giver. It was just a fantastic read.
Thank you for suggesting that. I actually love Go-Giver, Go-Getter. A lot of those. And are those actually the same author or are those different?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm quickly booting up Amazon to see. But Bob's written a couple books. He wrote It's Not About You. That was kind of a follow-up business parable. He's ultimately known for The Go-Giver, though. And it's just a fantastic story. And it inspired me. And I've told Bob so. And Bob was able to endorse my book, which touched me. I couldn't believe that, that was great. But when I read his, I thought, if he can make a point with the story, so can I. And I've told him so, that he was a huge inspiration to me. Oh,
that's fantastic. You know what? So they're not actually the same authors. Wow. And Bob also wrote Endless Referrals, which is, I'm trying to think if I've read that or not, but from what I've heard.
That's kind of a famous book. And he actually inspired me too, to approach Sound Wisdom, who is my publisher, because I saw, if Bob Burg's published a few books with them, they've got to be legit. And I was able to ask Bob, and he said, yeah, these guys are good to work with. So yeah, I've actually never met him in person, but when I do, it's going to be, he's going to get a big bear hug from me.
That's awesome. So Chris, my last thing before we depart, I'm basically asking, can you recommend the best way for our listeners to get more information on you and your book?
Definitely. Thanks for the opportunity. So you can learn more about the book at happyworkbook.com. So don't forget the word book afterwards. Some knucklehead has happywork.com. So it's happyworkbook.com. My website, it's on my website, which is chrisreimer.com. And if you want to say hey, you can find me on Twitter. It's at Chris Reimer. It's Reimer.
Perfect. Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your book with us.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks again for listening in today. If you'd like more information on Chris or his book, Happywork, check out the show notes at the elpodcast.com. And if you'd like to have an opportunity to win this book, visit the elpodcast.com and become a VIP.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to the elpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's the elpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.